Okay. All right. Well, I want to welcome everybody. Let me see here. Let me turn my volume up a little bit. There, I can hear myself. I want to invite everybody and thank you for showing up here. This is the first time that we've done a simulcast, and that may be old language, but I like it. A simulcast where we're going to be broadcasting out on IBGR, out on our network, on our radio network, while at the same time we're going to be here in Facebook with you. Now, we've had plenty of hosts and guests who have done this before. I just haven't done it. And one of the reasons is that it's simply been too much is going on around here some days for me to get on top of some of this stuff. All right. So no offense, but it's just a wild ride. All of you that are doing a startup, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. If you ever been on that, and you got a bunch of kids. And so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, this is the kind of the intro. So let me talk about how we got to the series that we're doing. And then I'll discuss the show for today. The series that we're doing is called The Technology of Business. And what struck us with this and why we went in that direction is that we were looking at all the data around the pandemic, or you should say the post-pandemic. And people going, oh, you got to do this and you got to do that. And it was kind of like this chicken little insanity, at least in my mind, chicken little insanity, that everybody's going, oh, it's going to be a new normal. And we got this great reset coming, and it was going to be, a whole new world. Now, of course, I hope it's not Huxley's Brave New World, because that didn't come out too well, at least in the book. But I really don't believe that was the case. Now, we did our homework, so this is not a subject to our belief system. It was a matter of we did our homework, we looked at the situation and said, you know what? I don't think so. I don't think that that's really true. What I think is going to happen is that, yes, there are going to be some things that are different. There always are things that are going to be different. But for the vast majority of everybody, what's going to change are the technologies. What's going to change are the things that are at your disposal that you can use as a business owner. But the fundamentals are just the same. I mean, if you think about it, let's go back 4,000 years. It's 2500 BC, and we're in Baghdad or Babylon. We're in Babylon. And we're in the bazaar, and we're a merchant. And what do we have? We have a booth. Now, let's talk about what the business proposition is there. That business proposition is pretty simple. I'm going to make something to which I'm going to sell to somebody, for which I'm going to try to figure out how to not only make money, because it's got to cost me less than I charge, but then I also got to pay taxes, because, hey, back in Babylon, you've had to pay your taxes. And so how do I figure out to keep the most amount of money possible? And if I've been successful in working through this formula, then the business is going to grow. And if the business grows, then guess what? Guess what the good news here? The good news is that I'm going to have to hire people in order to, basically hit the demand. And so as I grow my company, I'm going to need more people in it. Well, you know what? It's 4,000 years later, and it's not, let's think. It's not 1500 BC or 2500 BC. It is now, 2021, and it's the same proposition, is that you got to make something, okay, whether you're making a product or producing a service for delivery, you still got to make the damn thing. You're going to have to find somebody to sell it to. After you sold it, you got to figure out how to run the business so you can keep the most money possible, because everybody's going to have a hand in your pocket. And then finally, at the end of this, if you've been very successful with it, you're going to bring in people. So what we did is we said, okay, let's go back to basics. And our original thought on this was not, and I'll say it again, was not to call call it what we're calling it. We're calling it Reimagine the Future Now, or Reimagine Your Business. And those are the things that we kicked around. And a lot of people are using that, and I wish we didn't, because the people that are using it, and I've read their stuff, I'm like going, oh, man, that is either so out to lunch or so trite. However, it is what it is. We had to come up with a name because we wanted to call it Back to Basics, and the consensus of all our hosts and the leadership team was that in fact wasn't going to happen. They just said, hey, that's not going to sell. All right. So what we did is we called it Reimagine Your Business. And then we took it and we said, okay, let's build an ebook. So we started backwards. Let's build an ebook, because we do produce an ebook at the end of every season. The season is a business quarter. So what we did with the ebook was we're going to have 5 parts. Monday's going to be Finance Monday, which is the format we use here anyway. Tuesday was going to be Operations Tuesday. Wednesday was going to be Customer Wednesday. Thursday was going to be People Thursday. And today, which is a Friday show, even though from a lot of you who are in North America, it is, or you're in Europe, Africa, etc., it is still Thursday. Our broadcast day starts in Sydney, Australia at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, 8 o'clock in the morning in Sydney is 6 o'clock in the evening in New York until we have some time changes. So this is our Friday show. And on Friday, our conversation is owner as executive, because what we truly believe, and I know this from my years of working as a corporate consultant before I started working with small businesses, is that large companies there's a lot of things they do right and there's a lot of things they do wrong. And so as a small business owner, what you want is to take the good stuff and leave the bad stuff behind. But one of the challenges is that unless you're a escapee from a large corporation, if you're the owner and you've never worked in a large organization, there are things about being an executive you don't know that you should know. Now, after a couple of startups, you pick it up after a while. Maybe you get a mentor or coach, you kind of get it. Well, that's what we're doing here on the station. I had the good fortune of being in the C-suite several times. So I understand what the role is. I understand the job. And one of the things that we're doing on Friday is we're trying to bring that insight, because if you don't see yourself, and I don't care if you haven't opened your doors and you haven't sold a damn thing. In fact, I don't care if you don't have anything to sell yet. If, in fact, you see yourself as the executive of a multi-million-dollar firm, it is no guarantee you will become one, but the odds are with you. Because I'll give you the opposite side of the guarantee. If you see yourself as a glorified technician or mechanic, that is absolutely going to be true. And so in order to build a multi-million-dollar company, I don't know where your number is, okay? That's totally up to you. That's not up to me. But wherever that number is, you got to think like an executive. And so what we do is Friday is spent working on the business. Monday to Thursday is working in the business. You remember Michael Gerber's book on E-Myth, I don't know, 15 years ago or so. Not a bad book. I'm not putting it down. Not a bad book. But the piece on it that I got the most from was that whole piece about working in, working on. He is so right. And as a business owner, how do I make sure that some portion of my week, whether it's during the work week, it's at night, it's on the weekend, I'm working on the business. Right now, for myself, in this startup, what we call IBGR, we are an established business, so we're kind of a little bit beyond the startup, but we're still a very young company, is that at my best week, I might have 30% of my time working on the business. And that is because I refuse to work in it on the weekend, right? If I refuse to do any real work about, okay, this project's got to get done, or we got to get this deliverable out the door, and I ignore that, then I can kind of make it. Okay, we got about 30 seconds before game time here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through it. Now, the way this works, our time clock is we run about 2 to 2.5 minutes of commercials in my show every 30 minutes. So our time clock is we'll start at about 27:40. That's when I'll start the show, which will be on the air. So if you're listening to it on the air, that's when you'll get it. And then we will break maybe 20 seconds before the bottom of the hour, come back, and again, start that over. So this is going to be 2 podcasts, 2 recordings. And I see that we're already at 29:53, 52 counting down. So let me get prepared to get in my mode. Now, the big thing I recommend to all of you, and I'm going to say this when we start the show, is this. You must be looking at the show notes. I really mean it when I say you really must be looking at them. And the reason for it is simple. We don't write them for ourselves. We write them for you. And because I believe that the audio medium is awesome. There's a lot of things about it that I really like. One of them is that you can listen to it in the background, but I still think that people need text, something to look at. Well, we're predominantly a visual society. So if you go to the website, ibgr.network, when you get there, you'll see on the navigation bar, you'll see notes, and notes is going to be what? It's going to be right to center, click notes. And when you click notes, that'll take you to about 22, maybe as many as 2,300 pages, but around 2,200 pages. If you're live, what you'll see is at the top of the queue is E5.006, building scale with outsourcing. If it's not, then simply right next to it, you see the new choice of business search. Put that in. Put in E5.006, building scale with outsourcing, and you're downtown. All right, I've got about 30 seconds or so before I start. So if you got any questions, Donna Kunde, who's part of the executive team, is going to be monitoring what's going on in Facebook. I will be looking at it, but quite frankly, I have a radio show to do. And so I want to give you, as the listening audience, as well as everybody out there, because we broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in 172 countries. And so I'm going to take into account all the audience. All right, so with that, here we go. We're about 30 seconds out. And now you get to see sausage making, at least in the radio business. What else can I say to all of you as we're counting down? Oh, yeah, we don't run this as an internet station. We run this as a regular terrestrial station. All right, here we go. Counting down. And you are listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. IBGR is our call sign, and it is not alphabet soup like it is in most terrestrial radio stations. The I stands for Internet. Well, it used to. Now it stands for International. And we are currently heard in 172 countries. Now, to give you some way of gauging how significant that is, how good we feel about it, is that there are only 195 countries in the world. And if you take off probably 5 or 6 that are anti-capitalist, in other words, there is no business, well, we're probably close to 90% of the planet. So that's the I. The BG of IBGR is business growth. And what we do is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We talk to business owners, entrepreneurs, people in the gig economy, solopreneurs, all of you out there, the 5% of the planet who refuse to work for other people, that's who we're talking to. All right. And what do we talk about? We talk about starting a business, growing a business, or exiting a business. Now, does every show cover all three? No. Some shows are about starting, some shows are about growth, some shows are about exiting. This show is about growth. And then the R of IBGR stands for radio, in that we run this like a regular terrestrial radio station. In fact, we used to run a terrestrial radio station here in the greater Richmond area. And now we're using the internet as a broadcast tower. So the only difference between us and back in the day when we were running WNTW out of Chester, Virginia, is that the internet is my tower. And instead of talking to 500,000 people in the greater Richmond area, predominantly on South Side, I'm talking to 7.5 billion. I like that deal. All right, so let's get going. You need to go to the website, ibgr.network. That's ibgr.network. When you get to the website, navigation bar, as I said, click notes, open it up. And what we're going to be talking about today is E5.006. E stands for the Executive Friday. Every Friday, all we talk about is working on the business. How do you, as an owner, start thinking like an executive? 06 means it's 6 in the series, and 6 in the series of 9. All right. Building scale with outsourcing. All right. Now, you got it. And if you can't see it, just put that same information into the search bar and pull it up. So let me go, and I'm not going to read to you, but let me hit a couple things here. All right. So today's show is based on the assumption that you've made a decision as the owner of a business that you are going to use outsourcing as a tool to scale. Now, scale in the way that we're defining it, I think it's pretty common, but let me define it anyway. And that is, how are you going to scale up? You're going to build an infrastructure to your company. How are you going to grow it? And so, how do I scale my business? Now, you have a couple choices. One is don't. All right. So we'll put that aside because we're not going to have that conversation. That just ended. Or number 2 is you're going to scale it yourself by building yourself, or you're going to scale it by partnering with other people. And so I'm not going to advocate for one or the other. This show is focused on, if your decision is to scale your company by the partnerships and alliances that you build, then we're going to be talking about the techniques and the how-to. We've already covered this pretty extensively this season, and so I'm assuming that you've made that decision. And if your decision early on was not to, here's all I got to say to you. Keep an open mind and see how you feel about it at the end, all right? So that's my introduction. So as I said, we've tackled this several times. We've talked about it from many different angles. And so the question is not, should you do it? The question is, how do you do it? And I want to talk to you about that. Now, the objective piece. And what we do here with all our show notes for all of you that are new to this is our show notes are basically laid out like this. We explain the why. Why would you want to listen to it? That's the objective of the show. That's one or two things we want you to get from it. Then we have, what do you need to know? So the assumption here is there's information we have that you don't have that's going to make the case for application. And then further on down, what do you need to do is the application piece. And typically, this is balanced with 50% of every show's application. Today, it's going to be a little bit more on what you need to know and a little less on application. And that's just the way it turned out as I looked at what we had to cover. So the objective is, how do you find or build a network? And I have in parentheses a Japanese term, okay, that I want to talk about, karetsu, to grow your business. How do you find or build a network to grow your business? Now, if you're familiar with what we did on our opening session here for season 5, and we talked about the 4 principles. In fact, we have an ebook, and I'll come up with it here. I guess I'll come up with it. It's on our website. I think, Donna, if you're watching us on Facebook, and by the way, I'm doing my first live simulcast, and if you're looking at it, you know why I'm doing. I've been doing no simulcast. I've been doing radio. I've been told I have a face for radio, and I absolutely believe it. Okay. So if you're not over in Facebook and you want to watch this live, watch this live. We're at Facebook at IBGR Network. It's the same as our URL. Only in this particular case, there's no period or decimal point. You go over there. That's where we're at. Okay. Now, the karekitsu is a Japanese term. Now, let me put this into context for you. Is that it's World War II is over. It's 1945, and the Japanese are probably worse than the Germans about being flat on their butts. There is nothing there. And what happened was the Japanese went, okay, being the type of people that the Japanese are, they said, okay, let's pick ourselves up, kind of like the Germans did, and say, okay, let's get better. Let's fix this and let's get better. Well, at the same time, kind of parallel to it, there was the quality movement that was starting in the United States, except it didn't start. And what happened is a couple guys, Joe Duran, Edward Demings, those guys were the pioneers of it, Peter Drucker. And what they called it in the day was operations research. And what the government did during World War II is employed these great minds, management minds, statistical minds, to go, look, we've got to build an incredible war effort here. How do we turn out, for example, we turned out a Liberty ship, which was basically a freighter of about 600 feet. We turned out one a day. All right. Now, it didn't take a day to make it. All right. It didn't take a day to get that thing done because it was built in pieces. But those Liberty ships, one a day, one was launched. You look at bombers. They turned the Willow Run plant that General Motors has just outside of Ypsilanti, Michigan, between Ann Arbor, where University of Michigan is, and Detroit. They turned that into from a car factory, a bomber factory. They're turning out like 100 B-24s a week. All right. That's what these guys did. So when the war was over, they started trying to peddle their wares with American industry. And American industry was like, we don't need this stuff. And if you think about it, they didn't. They didn't need anything about quality or production cost or any of that stuff. Why? Nobody else was making anything. I mean, you basically, if we didn't make it, you couldn't buy it. And it was the way it was. Now, we had the Marshall Plan. We did kind of the similar in Marshall Plan in Europe. We did kind of similar thing in Japan, and we kind of built them up. But what happened was Duran and Deming went to Japan, and the Japanese jumped on this stuff, and they went, wow, this is a way that we can get back on our feet. And what the Japanese did is they formed these networks of smaller companies who collectively together could compete like a large organization, but at the same time didn't lose the agility, the nimbleness of being small. And that's where the Kretzus came from. And you figure from 1945, let's go to the oil crisis in 1972 and 73, 74, is that in the space of less than 30 years, the Japanese didn't steal. I was going to use the word stole, but it's not fair to the Japanese. The Japanese established themselves in under 30 years as the premier car maker around the world and took the title from us. And, we basically handed it to them. And so part of where I've been, this idea of the Keiretsu has been sitting with me for a long time. And we've built networks before in the different companies I've been in, but now we're really aggressively going after it. And part of what we're doing here, if you're in our Facebook group, and again, let me give you that URL. That's IBGR Network. And when you go there, if you come into that business page, we have a private group there. Join that private group. But the idea behind this is we're creating our own Keiretsu. Now, what does that mean? All right, let's come on down to what do you need to know. These are the previous shows. I am not going to go through these, but I recommend from the show notes that if you want to get into the conversation beforehand, that we, myself and Russell Colburn, who is a fractional CFO from Australia, what we have been talking about over the last couple of seasons to convince you to investigate this model. And we're both strong proponents of it. So I have one here, keep your obsessions and partner the rest. The deal with this one is core competence is what you should do. And I didn't want to use a technical term. So core competence basically means nothing more than what are the few things that your company must do better than anybody else. Identify what those are and outsource everything else. That would be a place that I would start. Now, as you grow in size, you may change that strategy. But if you want to grow fast, this is the way to go. Now, it's more difficult to manage because it's partnerships and not employees, but we'll get to that. Then I kind of talked about this on our Agile show. We have a show that we do strictly on Agile and Lean as two techniques around quality and process management. And we do this in partnership with Startup Radio. That's startuprad.io, which is the largest podcast platform out there for European startups, specifically in Germany, specifically high-tech companies. But there are partners, and this is something that we've been doing with them. And of course, Russell did his own show on outsourcing as part of his CFO, his fractional CFO, his fractional chief financial officer role that he plays with his clients. And it's interesting because he definitely takes a more of a financial approach to it, as I think he would, more process-based. All right, so now here's where we're going to go with this. Here's the stuff that you need to know. And I think what we can do is we can bang through half of this here in the remaining time before we take our first break. All right, so all these shows on the topic on why choose the model, the following information is what you need to do to make it happen. All right, so the way we're going to have this conversation is what's your aspiration for it? And, aspiration, dream, desire. I'm using the word aspiration because we use it in different places when we talk about business planning and things of that nature. So, and I'm using to sanitized, but I'm using our language because I'm telling you what we're doing. All right. This is what we're doing here. Now, for those of you that are listening for the first time, I don't do this to beat on our chest. I mean, I don't need to play King Kong here. I'm doing this because part of the premise behind this radio station, it is a network of entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. We don't talk about anything here that we either are not doing today or that we haven't done in the past. Everything here are things that we have experience doing. You want a college degree? Go to college. We don't hand that out here because what we got here is our faculty, if you want to call them that, is the guy who runs the lawnmower shop down the street and has been in business 40 years and he's a multimillionaire. And you're going, how the hell you do that? By fixing small engines. That is who's on the air. And you know what? Those are the people you want to be talking about, not somebody in an academic setting. Okay, so our aspiration, our dream, our desire is to deepen our relationships with individuals and organizations focused on small business development and growth. In other words, everybody that we touch, whether it's on the air and we don't know who you are, or you come and you join some group that we're running, like, for example, our Facebook page. We have something on LinkedIn, but we're not going to be talking about that today. And so how do we help you identify the parts of your company where you need to improve, as well as what the strengths you can build upon? And how do we help you develop and grow as a business. That's our mission. That's what we're trying to accomplish. So our long-term goal is become integral to the success and growth of our alliance members. In other words, if you're a host here, you got your own radio show, we are committed to your success and growth. If you're an advertiser and you're running ads on this station, we're committed to your growth. If you are a member, you're part of our Facebook group. If you're part of that, then our commitment to you is your success and growth. This is what we're building here. And we do that by sharing a platform. So we share a platform, we're all a host, and we share a platform with all of you. Now, Facebook is not the platform. We bring you to another place. But Facebook is a good place for us to meet. It's kind of like the town square. All right, let's all meet down on the quadrangle and have a conversation. And I'll say, okay, we're all at the quad. Let's go over to Joe's for a beer. Well, that's our platform. And then we make our intellectual property, our IP, available for you to use. All right. Now, short term, the objective. And that is, what are the immediate issues that you have in your business? Now, they could be positive. You have your own aspirations that you have not been able to achieve, or they could be negative in that you've got pain points, things that are causing you a great deal of pain inside the company. And pain is usually money and cost, or it's distraction, it's taking a lot of your time. What can we do about that? And so if you look at it, our goal is to build a relationship to make you a better company. And in the process of you doing that, you make us a better business. Number two is our long-term goal with you is to become integral to your success. In other words, once we start this relationship is going to last a long time. For as long as you're in business and as long as we're in business, then we ought to be working together. There is no reason that we are not. That's our long-term goal. Now, will we come up short some days? Yeah, we will. We're human. We run a business just like you guys, and that we are not perfect all the time. In fact, perfect doesn't happen very often. And certainly if I got my hands in it, perfect doesn't happen at all. And our objective, our immediate thing that we're working on is what is keeping you from either achieving your dreams on the positive side, or what are the pain points? What's the BS that you got to deal with every day that if you could make go away, you could achieve your dreams. Okay. Now that takes me down to our relationship. By the way, this is a format that I recommend that you use. This is how you kind of build your charter for your Keiretsu. This is how you build your charter for your network. And I kind of give this short, I kind of shorten the story up, but let me go back to when we talked about our ebook and reimagining your business. Two things that we talked about that were integral and absolutely essential for the future, because part of what we're doing this season is in the post-pandemic business world is our goal was, and I'm going to be unpolite about it, and I'm going to call it what it is. I try not to swear other than damn. I use arse. I don't use the other word for it. I use the British term for it, or I could say bullocks, I guess. But here's the deal. We're trying to idiot-proof the business, not idiot-proof it from you. You're the only idiot that has the right to destroy your own company, okay? I'm not calling you an idiot, but basically, it's your company. It's your company to do what you want to do with. We're never going to tell you what to do with your company. What we're going to do is we're going to provide you with information, insights, tools for you to make your own decisions. But how do we protect ourselves from the idiots out there? The ones who make catastrophic decisions that negatively affect us that they don't have to pay the penalty on. I mean, imagine being ruled as a non-essential business that relies totally on foot traffic, and because of the pandemic, you're closed down, and now you're hearing all of this news coming out about the fact that, yes, the pandemic was serious, but only if you had these pre-existing conditions. If you were a healthy person, yeah, you may get sick, and yeah, you might you might have to go home for a couple of days. But you know what? That sounds like influenza A and B from 2019. And yet, how many people are out of business? I mean, Yelp did a study in New York, and 65% of the restaurants in New York that closed, which is over half of them, are never going to reopen. Now, what happened to those owners? They got wiped. There's no insurance to take care of you. You don't have an account to go to. If you've been wiped, there's no PPP money here in the United States for you. So my issue is, how do I make my company, and I'll use now sweeter, kinder terms, because it's what we would say in quality, how do I error-proof my company? That is what we're talking about. And the two of the four pieces of that, One was to build a network-based business. Networking is not a tactic. It is not going to a networking meeting, though going to a networking meeting, if it's right for your company, is a very good thing to do. That's not what we're talking about, is that this is a business model. And that part of what makes a networking model work is the more players you have, the greater the power of the network. And we're building on that. And the second thing has to do with exactly the conversation that we're having here, is that stick to the knitting. Do the things that you do well, that you must do well to be competitive in your marketplace, and outsource the rest of it. All right. So let's go to the relationships. And basically, what you're looking for in the relationships, you're trying to do two things. I want to build understanding, and I want to build trust. I want to understand you. I want you to understand us. And then based upon that, okay, I want a certain amount of trust that when you have an issue or problem, or we do, we'll turn to you, you turn to us. And again, I'm simply going to tell you, how did the Japanese go from being flat on their arses in 1945 to, by 1974, owning the automotive market around the world? This is a major piece of that. All right. So, understanding, I'm going to build an operational knowledge base on Alliance members' businesses. Okay. So what you're saying here, put it in your terms, is that understanding is that I want to understand how the members of this alliance, however I want to define them, how does their businesses operate? How do they make money? We call that a business model, but it doesn't matter at this point in time. How do they make money? Then number two is that how do I make the resources that they need accessible? How do I provide them? Now, you may be saying to yourself, well, this is all fine and good, and so it sounds like I'm going to be doing a lot of stuff for free. Well, some of these can be people can pay to get into. Others is that, yeah, it's difficult to get into one of these, but once you're into it, and as we go a little bit further, is that there is discounts for buying services from each other. There's also the sharing of clients. And so these will cost you something to be in. There is nothing free in the world. The old joke about there's no free lunch. What was that joke? They asked some guy if he could describe in one sentence the lessons of life, all the lessons rolled up together. I think it was a rabbi joke. And he just said, no, there's no free lunch. Okay. And so I can't do it as good. I can't get into the Yiddish that I learned when I lived in New York, but that's close enough. Okay. So that's the understanding. And in trust is I understand what you're trying to do. I understand what your pain points are. Is that one, two, we have transparent communications going on between us. And what that means is that I don't hold anything back. I'm telling you the truth of what's going on, even when it's ugly for us. And I'm also giving you feedback when you need to hear ugly news. In other words, if we're really going to have a relationship like this, we got to be blunt with each other, and not in a way that makes each other annoyed or mad. But it's got to be a good business relationship. A good business relationship is where the partners tell each other the truth. Well, that's what I want to do here with my communications, okay? And that my focus is on how does my relationship with you make you successful, all right? And your focus is how does the relationship with us make us successful? You see, what the Japanese did here is they got parts manufacturers, they got transportation companies, they got banks, they got everybody that was part of what you would call the value chain together. And we'll get into that. In fact, that's almost the next piece we're going to do. And they brought them together. And so what happened is that now suddenly they could do most anything. So if you came to them and somebody came to you and said, I need X, you don't make it, you don't do it, but your partners do. And two things. One, you'll get a piece of this in some form or fashion. And number two, when somebody goes to one of your partners and says they need Y and they don't do it, they're going, I got just a guy for you. Come on over here. You go to the door, you knock on it like the old speakeasies and say, Joe sent me. And they get you in, and then you get friends and family pricing. That is kind of what's going on here in the relationship. All right, I've got about a little less than 5 minutes left, and I got the portfolio piece. So let me slow down here for a second and talk about what we're doing. I'll come back and I'll pick up the remaining part of what you need to know, and that's going to be the portfolio and development, and then we'll talk into the specifics of what to do. And so if you scroll down down to the bottom of the page, Look, follow the Reimagine Your Business series all season. Follow this. I mean, there's only a couple of shows left, but there's tons of podcasts. And if you go to my page, and Donna, go ahead and put my page up there. And that is my landing page here. So it's ibgr.network. When you get there on the navigation bar, you'll see network. And if you just mouse over it, you'll see talent. Well, I probably shouldn't call myself talent, but I'm in the list. There's other people on that list who are talented. You go to talent and you'll see my name and click it. And what that'll give you is all of the podcasts that I'm doing and the podcasts from the season. So there's not any information that we are not making available to you. And let me make the point that fits where we are so far in the presentation or in the show. Take this the way I offer it, okay? Because this is not a brag. Is that I used to, when I did this for companies and I did turnarounds of small businesses, I got a piece of the business. At a minimum, I was getting about $10,000 a month to do this. That was the minimum. I got a piece of the business. When I was doing this for large corporations, I was getting $2,500 to $4,000 a day. Now, I don't say that as any pat on the back. What I'm saying to you is the quality of the information that we are making available to you is at that level. And that's just me. If I had Richard Miller on, I had Donna Cundy on, I had Russell Colburn on, I had Jerry McRae on, I had Lisa Asquith or Sarita Johan, or David Wilson or Jonathan Kennedy. Bert Robinson, I can go down the list of everybody we got on the air, our major host, all can tell you the same thing. This is invaluable information. And at the price point, you got to go, hey, what's up here? Okay. So follow the series. In fact, follow the whole damn thing. Number two is please take advantage of our news service. We started this just about a month ago, and we've been watching our ranking in terms of where do we stand against other global business news and talk stations or networks on the internet. And right now, according to Alexa, not the one you talk to with Amazon, though Amazon does own this one. This is the old Alexa from the old days that would give you a ranking. All our competitors were ranked ahead of them. And so we've built a news service here where we have our own artificial intelligence. We have our own web crawler. We have our own electronic newspaper. And so twice a day, we get 100 brand new articles put up from the various feeds that we're looking at. They're designed to come from the four markets that we work in. The one that we're in right now is that we're broadcasting right now into the Australian market, and we're broadcasting into the Indian market and in all the surrounding countries. On our 11 o'clock news show, we're going to be broadcasting into Africa, Europe, United Kingdom, as well as North America. So what news is relevant to all of you related to starting, growing, or exiting a business? That's what we do in the news. So ibgr.news. Go there, subscribe. We don't do anything else with your email address except you get the newspaper. Number three is download our app. And I've worked on this alliteration a lot. So here's what the app is. It goes into your smart device, into your phone. And what you get is solutions on demand in the palm of your hand. All right. Hey, pretty good, huh? You like that? And what does that really mean? That means that you can listen to any show live. You can listen to podcasts. You can read the show notes. You can take a look at the blog. You can look at the news. You can contact any one of us for assistance or help, all on your mobile device. Download it. And that download is a link, or you can go to ibgr.app, the app. All right. I need to be out. This is the end of our first half. At the bottom of the hour, when we come back, we're going to pick this back up. We're going to finish up talking about what you have to do, and then talk about what you need to do in terms of making this happen. So this is show or podcast E5.006, Building Scale with Outsourcing. My name is William Eastman. Go nowhere. We will be right back. Do not touch that dial because I'll whack your hand. All right, so everybody that's on now, we're about 15 seconds out going down. We've got some music playing in the background. And what we've done here is we put about 30 seconds of buffer music in there just so that some idiot host like me doesn't forget where the mark is. All right, so now we're doing a countdown. So about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we're going to be back in. So I want to give you a sense of the flow of the business in terms of what we're doing here at IBGR. Okay, and let me see. Okay, this is how the radio station operates. And by the way, this is how a radio station operates. So we're basically operating just like we did at WNTW. We have a time clock. We get different kind of requirements because we're not under FCC control, so we don't have to worry about swearing or the language we use, but it's not professional. I mean, I have used the F-bomb once or twice on the air in the last 18 months, but I used it at exactly the moment in time when it should have been used. But I don't use it. All right. Hell, damn, and ass, or arse are really as far as I go with that. And you notice I say BS and not bull. Blah, blah, blah. All right. So what we do here on the break is we have some commercials running, and typically what happens is the host refreshes themselves with an adult beverage. You can see here that I'm drinking cafe. In fact, this town is at Ashford, Connecticut, and it was founded in 1714. And it was founded by one of my ancestors. We came over from Great Britain. My father's part of the family. We came over from Great Britain in 1638, and we lived in a little town called Downton Parish. Has nothing to do with the TV show. It's about 8-9 miles south of Salisbury in Wiltshire. And we came here in 1638 as indentured servants. So the Eastman name is not common except in New England. All right. And in New England, there's a lot of Eastmans up there. Apparently, they didn't migrate anyplace else. And yes, if you're asking yourself, am I related to George Eastman or Eastman Kodak? Yeah. At some point, George Eastman and one of my great grandfathers were brothers. And his family migrated from Vermont to Rochester, and my family migrated from Vermont to Iowa and then made the trip west along with everybody else. Okay, 10 seconds out. And we're back. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm host for today's show. This is show or podcast, depending upon how you're listening, E5.006. E stands for executive. It's Executive Friday. Every Friday, we talk about not working in the business because we do that 4 days a week. We talk about working on the business. If you're not working on the business, you're not working on the future. Working in the business, Monday to Thursday, is working in the present. Friday is working on the business, and it's working on the future. Now, this show is building scale with outsourcing. And the idea behind this is, as you grow your company, do you want to build everything yourself? Or do you want to stick to the knitting, as Tom Peters once famously said, and do the things that you should be doing, that you should do well, because that's what it takes to compete in your marketplace, and then outsource the other stuff that you're not good at and you probably never will be, or to be good at it, you're either going to have to buy somebody out or spend a lot of money. All right, so that's where we're at. So you need to go to the website, ibgr.network. That is ibgr.network. It's our name, our call sign, our URL, and our broadcast frequency. When you get there, you'll see the navigation bar across the top on the right of center. I don't know how many times I've been on the website, and I had to think about that. Right of center, click notes, and when you click notes, drop it down. And if you're listening to this live, and live would be, it's Friday morning, and it's 33 minutes past the hour of 8 o'clock in Sydney, Australia. Okay, and then you know it's live. If that's the case, and you get to the notes page, there's like 2,200 pages of show notes in there, just to give you a sense of how much intellectual property we make available to people. Then right next to, right there on that page, you'll see New Choice for Business Search, by the way, is on every page, and I'll talk about that when we close out. You put in E5.006 and building scale with outsourcing, and guess what? It's going to pop up. By the way, my name is William Eastman. I am the host for the show, and I'm the head bottle washer, and I'm the guy who drives the car and cleans it out and pumps gas and all that other crap. Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right. I just sweared when I said I didn't do that. All right. Go notes. Here's what we covered in the first part. So if you're listening to this, this is broken into two pieces. This is our part one podcast. This is part two podcast or recording. I'm not going to recover that ground with any great depth. You're going to have to listen to it in order to get it. But basically what I did here is that this show is not based upon convincing you that you ought to look at outsourcing as a methodology to grow your company in the future. Not at all. That's the other shows that we have listed. So what you have on where you see what you need to know. Previous show, there's 3. I probably could put 10 up here, but there are 3. They were all designed to get you to go, yeah, that's a good idea. I'm assuming if you're here, you've gone, that's a good idea. Now, if you haven't made that decision yet, Then what I ask you to do is keep your powder dry. Let me finish. Let me finish and see if I can't change your mind. Now, if I don't and it doesn't fit you, wonderful. However, if it does fit you, then you ought to consider it. Okay. So, what we talked about is what do you need to do in order to be clear about it? This is based upon a concept that really the Japanese are the ones that got this one. And in the story I told in the previous segment, is that when the Japanese were flat on their arses in 1945, there was a lot of techniques that they borrowed from the United States because the businesses in the U.S. industry wasn't interested in the quality movement at the time. They didn't need to be because they owned every market they were in. But the Japanese adopted it pretty fast. And in less than 30 years, the Japanese went from basically having no car industry. They were building cars before the war, but no car industry, to being the number one supplier of automobiles around the world. By 1974, Japan was producing more cars than Detroit. How they do it? This is part of it. And they created these things called Keiretsus, which was a network of different small companies who, when they come together, they have the power in the field of a large company, but because they're all small pieces, it's still fairly decentralized and they act agile and nimble. All right. And what we were doing is talking about what were the principles around what you build. And where I left this off as you go down, I left it off at relationships, and that you had two basic focuses: understanding and trust. Now, let's get to the portfolio members. One of the things that you do is you try to build a good portfolio. Now, how do I do that? Well, let's look at the value chain. And the value chain is, let's take a small business. You got a small business owner. What are all the services that small business owners need? Well, you got banks. Now, we don't have any banks on the station because you know what? Banks can't do this. Banks, I can't put anybody. We have a couple people who used to work in banking who could come on here, but we can't put any banks on. But we have people with banking knowledge. But you don't have to have just banking. You need funding. Well, we have David Wilson, who runs a company that helps fund different business owners. You got insurance. All right. So you got insurance. You've got you may have transportation. You may have you see where I'm going with this. In other words, you take a look at a company and you say, what is the molecule that they have to operate in? What are all the players that come in? And so when I build a portfolio, what you want to do is you want to make sure that you have all of the players together. So from A to Z, whatever the client, whatever the customer is going to need, we have that resource. That's how we build that out. Because the only other option I have is I do all that. And of course, I'm not going to do that. Right? So that's the idea of the portfolio. How do you put it together? Now, the vertical portfolio is exactly what I talked about. What's the value chain? From beginning to end, the entire journey that the customer goes on to get all the services they need. Do we have all those different services? Now, the horizontal portfolio is the sharing of customers. In other words, you want buy X, I only make Y. So I send you to my partner who makes X. I get a little cut of that because you think about it, the cost of sales are not very high for him. If they walk in his door or I call him up and I give the recommendation. And by the way, the cost of sales for most of you is 10 to 20%, or you can take a look at the cost of individual acquisition, and that could be your compensation. I would say to you that if you gave somebody 10% for a deal you closed without a great deal of work, 10% is fair because that's probably what the acquisition would cost you. Okay. But the other thing is that you pass that down there. You help to have one of the members of the alliance. What happens when somebody walks in and they don't want Y, they want Z, and you make Z? Oh, well, it's coming back down. And what happens is that the network of players in the horizontal portfolio, the network of players means that the customer never has to leave the group. Now, you think about this. If I'm buying hardware and software and technology, I go to IBM and there's not a thing I need to buy outside of the IBM organization, is there? They can provide the whole thing. Well, you're doing the same thing, only you don't have to be as big as IBM and own all the means of production and all the sales, all the supply lines. That is the concept here. All right. And in development, you're always constantly running some sort of development to, one, make the partners in the deal better. See, this is what makes this really different, is that if you're not really good in marketing, well, you have two choices. One is you can go to somebody who's in the network and get better at marketing. We have Richard Miller, who runs a marketing agency out of Adelaide, Australia. So if you really need marketing, you could turn that over to Richard. Or Richard can help develop your marketing muscle to where you can do it yourself, but he's part of the partnership. And I'm sure you've got some services that you could offer as well. You might be in the accounting business and you have some insights into marketing agencies that he doesn't have that can help out. And so what's constantly going on is we're strengthening every business in the alliance, okay? And by doing that, we strengthen the alliance. Now, I'm not trying to turn this into we all love each other and the world is good, and all that type of stuff. This is not a morality play. It could be because it makes a lot of sense and it's a nice way to do business. I'm being hardcore business guy right now. Hardcore blue collar kid from Long Island, grew up in business. Here's the deal: this stuff works and makes money. All right. Now you can add all the other stuff to it. All right. What do you need to do? I've laid out for you what you have to consider. And what I read to you was basically sanitized somewhat hours. This is what we're doing right now. In fact, what do you think this group is about? Why do you think that we've asked you to come into a private Facebook group? We want to help build your businesses. And there may be something that you can do to help us, and we will work out a relationship that is beneficial to both parties. But that's one of the reasons that we built this group, is to bring you in and to say, okay, let's work together. If your business is more successful and you grow, we win as a radio station, as a radio network. Okay? That's simple. All right, what do you need to do? Number one is design a process for selecting potential members. This is part of the management of your portfolio. You're going to need a set of standards that you are going to put into place. Some of those could be financial. If in terms of they have to be self-sufficient. In other words, if they're relying upon other members of the alliance to fund their business because they don't have enough sales, you probably want to pass them up. Because what's going to happen is they're going to get greedy, not because they're greedy people. They're going to get greedy because they don't have any money. And so, you know what it's like when you're broke and you need money and the business is hanging in the balance. You sometimes will do things that later on you're going to wish I didn't do that. And so that could be just one of those. But getting a good selection process is essential. Now, we've done that. We've got, he's known as the referral guy, but Steve Sweeney out of Adelaide, Australia. And right now he's doing our onboarding for host, but, and you'll get your own show. But we're building that process out to do that for everywhere, because we're not only doing this with host, we're doing this with advertisers, we're doing it with members, people like you, and we're doing it with some of the cohort groups that we're building. We're actually putting together our own VC type boot camps, incubators, and accelerators, which is something we're going to announce in a couple of weeks. So this is all based on the same design. Okay. Once you got a way of selecting to get the right people in, because the wrong people, it's going to fall apart. Number two is, what's the process of onboarding those people into the system? Now, this may be where one of the things that you do want to do is you want to look seriously at their strengths and weaknesses. And if, in fact, there is a predominant weakness, you may want to immediately go to work on that. And it could be that you're running continuous training programs. Okay, that could be it. Or it could be a special, a special deal. But the thing here is that I have to recognize that I'm not going to have people in here who are totally competent for everything that they do. We're talking small businesses. What I'm looking for is people who have made the decision of what they're good at and have made the decision of what they're going to outsource, and that's part of the selection. So when I onboard them, let's identify strengths and weaknesses. Let's understand how they can contribute immediately to the alliance, and how can the alliance immediately contribute to them. Number three is what we need is ongoing improvement projects. In other words, how do we get people better? Now, the model that we're going to be using is subject matter experts. In other words, we're going to be running on a Monday, we're going to be running something around improving the finance of your business. It's not going to be for people external. It's going to be for people on the inside. And it's going to be run by our subject matter experts, because the people that are on the air on Monday, there is nothing around finance and accounting and fractional CFO and selling the business. There is nothing these people don't know. And so they're going to be running this for everybody else. operations on Tuesday. The people that we've got, these are people who have been in operations and manufacturing, have been in services, have worked in agile, have worked in lean. They understand how to build the infrastructure to scale a company from. And what's going to be critical here for us, I'll talk about it from our standpoint, is what platforms we make a decision to go to, because the way that you can't have people just doing whatever they want when they want it, even in an alliance like this, they have to be on a standard platform to where everybody's kind of working in the same methodology. And there's got to be some agreement to that. But really what it is, most people will agree to most anything if there is a standard format, because typically with small businesses, you don't encounter it. All right. Now that's our context. In your context, it could be different. Number 4, big one, is that what's your lead generation methodology for your partners? The people who come here, the people who work here, what is your process for lead generation? Because it is going to be essential. How do I, in other words, as a business owner, put yourself in this situation. I'm in it all the time. I'm sure you are too. I have 5 or 6 different competing responses. In other words, I got 5 things demanding my attention. How do I choose which one gets my attention? Well, I can tell you right now, if which one produces the most money, if any. If it ain't the first cut, it's the second cut. And so this relationship has to be financially rewarding for everybody involved. So how do we use the collective resources to generate leads for new business? In other words, how do I know that though I can't rely on the alliance to bring in all of my customers, I need to know that 20 or 30% of my revenue is going to come from leads from inside the business. If you think about it, why the hell do you join a networking group? Kind of like BNI. BNI is a good one to talk about because it's international. It's all over the place. Why are you in a BNI group? It's all about referrals. Okay. I mean, we got it. Steve Sweeney makes a living on referral business. This is what has to happen within your alliance or in your network. Okay. And now the last one is internal training, consulting, and coaching from the members. Each person in the process of onboarding, we've identified strengths and weaknesses. And so as somebody is in need of something, view this as taking all the companies together, all the businesses who are working together on this, and combining them and building an organizational chart like you were running a big company. Because in a big company, and I need help on something, I call so-and-so. I look at the directory or I look it up on the computer. I call them on the phone. I pay them a visit, send them an email. Who knows? I Zoom them now. And we have a conversation. And that person's going to help me. Why? Because we're in the same company. Well, this is not a whole lot different. Now, in our aspect, because of the talent base that we have, is that we are going to be doing consistent internal training. What are the things that people need to know? And training is what you do when people need to understand something, all right, to know. Consulting is when people need to do something to do. And so once the training is done, okay, let's get this thing applied. And then what is the coaching for? The coaching is for individuals to get them to stay on track, to stay focused. And if this is the commitments they made, how do they get through that to the end? We're doing all 3 of those now. So I've got to the end of this, and I just want to talk a little bit about all of you that are listening here, is that if you're not a member of this organization, I don't know, without making just a sales pitch of, and if you join up today, I'll give you $1 million, okay, or something of that nature. I don't know how to make a pitch that is stronger than the one I just made. This is what we're building as a network. So let me give you perspective if you're going, should I do this? We started in April of 2020. We had one host, me. I did 6 hours a day, 5 days a week, and then that was recycled around the world. Okay. We had one listener in one country. Now we have about 30 hosts and growing. We are in 172 countries around the world. When you take all our hosts together, we have probably just a tad shy of a millennium of experience, 1,000 years of experience as entrepreneurs and business owners, as well as the other things that we've done, whether it's coaching or consulting or training or manufacturing, where whatever our other areas of expertise are. That's what we bring. And that our intellectual property is as good as any you can find. And where can you get it? You can just go to the show notes. So this is what we're building. And what we have going for us is that you don't have to pay any money to get into the system. All you've got to do is listen and go, you know what? Those guys know what they're talking about. Or if you listen, you go, hey, they're out to lunch. There you go. Think about the money you didn't spend, the money you didn't waste by doing that. All right. So let me come back and kind of do my summary here is that if in fact you are going to outsource, right, you're going to make a decision that you're going to be, your obsessions are a couple. You're going to be good at this, this, and this, and you're going to outsource the rest. Then how do you build that network? And let's assume that you're not going to join a network, you're going to build your own. Well, we just gave you the script, okay? So the first thing you got to do is you got to say to yourself, okay, let's be really clear about what our dream, our aspiration is. What are we trying to accomplish? Then what is the goal of this? Based upon that, in order to achieve that, I have a goal, and probably I'll have several goals, but what results do we have to get in order to make that aspiration true? All right. Then what are our objectives? I'm going to have more than one. I just kept this simple. So what are the objectives, the activities that we're going to engage in to achieve the goal to make the dream come true? All right. And in this particular case, because we're building a network, this is really two things to consider. It's relationship and platform. Those are the two things you got to consider. And I didn't do anything on the platform side. I just left it out. But what you're looking at is what's the platform that we're going to get everybody aligned and calibrated with. So it's like we're all working together, even though we could be around the planet. I mean, right now we have services being delivered all over the world. I mean, Singapore, we get services out of Singapore. We're getting services out of Australia. We're getting services out of India. We were getting services out of Nigeria and Lebanon, but monetary issues in the Middle East have made it impossible for Lebanon to do business. But see, here's the international organization, and we're not IBM. We're not a big company. Now, we're going to be a big company. In fact, we already are a big company in one way. Look at who we do business with. And it's those partnerships that make us a big company. And so the portfolio is important in terms of who I select. I'm building relationships with those people and what platform I'm going to put them on, and understand that some amount of our time and energy is going to be spent on developing the competence of the members of the alliance. Everybody's going to show up with a different set of skill sets and a different set of core competencies and some weaknesses. And so what we do is, what's the benefit of being in the alliance? You're running a better company because you're getting the help. In some cases, you know you need it, you just couldn't get it. In other cases, help you never even identified because you don't know what the problem is. And so we built kind of the script for you, and then here what you got laid out is what you need to do. Now, there's more to do here. I couldn't do the whole thing. I mean, if you think about it, we've got of the 60 minutes, we got probably 6 minutes of music and ads and etc. So in 54 minutes, I can't tell you the whole thing. This is as close as I can come. And if you look at the other shows, I would say to you, this took at least 3 shows, 2 other shows to get to this. And we take it beyond that. But here's the bottom line. You join up with us. You come into Facebook. You become a member of our group. And what will happen is that you will be involved in this process because we're adamant about what we're doing here. We are all in. We've designed this business to be self-sufficient and self-supporting. And our mission is to grow companies, because as I look at my own experience around the world working, I work for the United Nations development programs, not as an employee, as a contractor. And I had a chance to work in Africa. And that's kind of when I had one of those epiphany moments when I got knocked off the donkey on my way to Damascus. And the issue really comes down to me is really simple. The mission of this station and everything we do in this network is to increase the generational wealth of the business owner. In other words, what that means is not only do you get paid back for all that you put into this, but that you have something to take back to your family. because one of the issues with poverty, it's generational. And a lot of people don't even start at zero. A lot of people start at negative numbers. One of the advantages we have in the West and a lot of places, or maybe not in the West, maybe that's the wrong way of saying it. A lot of families, when you're born into them, you're born in with some privilege in terms of they've got money, they've got finances, you can do stuff, you get to education, etc. But there's a lot of people for whom that's not possible. I don't believe in the government can fix that problem because in many cases I think the government creates it. But what I can do is that if I can help a single business owner increase their wealth that they can take home, we can guarantee that that family is going to take care of itself in the future. And number two, here is the most positive impact possible. They're going to grow their businesses, and when they grow their businesses, they're going to create jobs. Now, if they're part of our network, they've joined up like I'm asking you to join up, then we can help them create not just good jobs, we can help them create incredible jobs. We can help them create a long-term future for as long as they want to have it for the business. I don't know what your exit strategy is, but if yours is, I want to build it as big as I can get it, and I'm going to leave it with my kids, this is the place to be because we can show you how to do that. On the other hand, if you go, look, I want to get it so big, I want to sell it, and then I want to go suck on rum in Aruba, or if I'm in Africa, where would I go? Would I go to the Canaries? Yeah, I think or the Maldives. I'd go to the Maldives and suck on some rum there. Anyway, all right, let me close this out. I really appreciate everybody listening and being in here and our first session. And the good news is I don't have to look at myself. I have no screen that's got my face on it. And so I am really happy about that. So at the bottom of the page, a couple things. Follow the series, and we've got a couple more shows, but we've got a ton of podcasts, ibgr.news. Go there twice a day. I do the news live. It's one of my fun parts of my day because I get a chance to riff. If it's a news story, I typically leave it as news. If it's an opinion piece, I'll give you my opinion. Download the app, number 3. And by the way, everything that's bolded there in blue is a link. Download the app for a phone, and you can access everything we have. I mean, think about that. You're a member of this group, and on your cell phone, you have solutions on demand. Anything that you need, you can get immediately on demand. And then finally, the research piece is that if you're looking to find out, get some information on how to start, grow, or exit a business, don't go to Google. Don't go to Yahoo. Don't go to Bing. Don't go to where you go. Come here. Because you see, what are they good at? What Google and the rest of the search engines are good at is finding clickbait. You do it. I do it. We do it. We got clickbait on our website, just like you got on your website. You're trying to get people to come to it. You know, there's close to 2 billion websites out there. Of that, about 200 million are active. All right. And so if you think about that, how do you get found? All right. So that is, everybody's trying to do the clickbait so you can find them. And so what if you get 100,000 hits on Google? 10 of them are probably good and the rest of them are terrible. Here, you do your research here. Here's my guarantee. I'd give you a money back guarantee, but since it's free, I'm not gonna give money away, because if I gave you a guarantee on the search, I'd be giving you money all the time. That's just how life is. Here's my guarantee to you. You go there and you search for something related to starting, growing, or exiting a business, you'll find it. And you'll find it from several perspectives. You'll have how to be a fractional CFO from 3 different CFOs with different perspectives. That's what's there. Okay. I greatly appreciate you, all of you, joining me and the show. And everybody, do not touch that dial. All day Friday, we're talking about how to work on the business. My name is William Eastman. I was the host for the show. This is show or podcast E5.006, Building Scale with Outsourcing. And I greatly appreciate you being here and joining us on a Friday. And except for those of you in North America, it's Thursday, but hey, you know how those Aussies are. They're number 1 in the world. Just ask them. And so with that, take care and don't touch that dial, because the stuff, I just starting to flow here. The stuff that's coming will kill you. Well, maybe not kill you, but you sure like it. Ciao. All right. I'm going to just talk for a couple of the minutes here. Anybody's got any questions, anything that they want to ask me, this is a good time to do so, because when I get in the middle of this show here, I tell you what, I just kind of lose myself. All right. And I'm serious when I say I lose myself. I'm just like in it, rolling through it. Okay, so comments, questions, anything that you've got, I would love to hear it. And oh, wait a minute, I better not do that. Oh yeah, I'm still in. I'm still connected to StreamYard, so I don't have to worry about it. Okay, so now questions, comments, anything you want. Oh, look at it. I'm looking at my own page, and I'm looking at the stuff on my own page. Who would have thought? All right, Donna, you got anything that I can answer? Or questions I can respond to, or is everybody pretty much they're all done, including me, because I'm gonna grab some dinner here pretty soon, and some adult beverages to go along with dinner. All right. So if that's the case, then I greatly appreciate all of you being on here. I've had a lot of fun with this. I haven't done this in a while, and I'm not a big video guy. I love the fact that I'm on a radio station, and so that's where my energy is at. All right. So with that, everybody, you take care. Have yourself a great day, and with that, have a great business week. This is a great time. We're coming out of the pandemic, and though there are some warning signs coming out of the economy in terms of things may not be as good as we hoped, at least we're not isolated anymore. All right. So with that, as I used to love to say, this is Eastman out. All right. And broadcast. All right. We've ended